අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT Mobitel දේශයේ ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday, the 24th of August 2023. IMF review. The central bank governor assures that Sri Lanka need not rush towards implementing structural reforms before the IMF review. Interest ceilings. The central bank imposes interest rate caps on market interest rates. Bingo Trinco. President Ranil Wickremesinghe highlights Trincomalee as the next economic hub.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. හොඳම මිලට කල් පවතින වහරයක්.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and a warm welcome to you today from AdaDerana's English News First at 9. This is Jonathan Benedict. Let's get into our top story for the evening. Speaking at the Monetary Policy Review brief today, the Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe said that Sri Lanka's implementation of conditions under the International Monetary Fund's extended funding facility need not be rushed before the September progress review, but can be implemented structurally before the IMF Executive Board review. The governor went on to say that the debt repayment plan was to achieve a debt to GDP ratio of 4.5% gradually by the end of the debt restructuring. Currently, Sri Lanka's current debt to GDP ratio stands at approximately 9.4%, and with a payment of approximately $6 billion per annum before being declared default in 2022. Meanwhile, the central bank decided to maintain its key policy rates at existing levels.
The Monetary Board of the Central Bank decided to maintain the standing lending facility rate at 11% and the standing deposit facility rate at 12% following a careful analysis of current and expected developments in the domestic as well as the global economy, while noting the significant easing of monetary conditions since June 2023.
අපි දල් ප්‍රතිපත්තිය පහුගිය වාර දෙකකදීම පොළි අනුපාතය අඩු කරා. ඊට පස්සේ සත් දෙකකට විතර කලින් අපේ ද්‍රවශීලතාවය වැඩි කිරීම සඳහා සංචිත අනුපාතය අඩු කරා 2% 2%. එතකොට ඒ අනුව මුදල් ප්‍රතිපත්ති ලිහිල් කිරීමේ සෑහෙන ක්‍රියාදාමයක් කරගෙන ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා ප්‍රතිපත්ති පොළි අනුපාතය පැත්තෙන්.
However, the central bank warns that the disinflation trend could be impacted due to ongoing weather conditions and the volatility in global food and oil prices.
See inflation stabilizing around the mid-single digit level going forward over the medium term. But there could be risks to these baseline projections, both on the upside and on the downside. Upside risks mainly include possible impact coming from the drought conditions which are impacting the economy overall, and also possible weather related developments toward the end of the year as well. And also globally we are seeing the energy prices are rising and food prices are also rising, so there will be some impact coming from that as well.
Meanwhile, commenting on the upcoming progress review of the IMF due in September, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe said that Sri Lanka should not need to rush towards implementing structural reforms given that there is still time until the IMF Executive Board review.
Now, what is the status of the domestic debt restructuring? Especially now we've seen past, if I'm not mistaken, in July we had 57 to be met conditions, and from that 35 roughly were met. And then 25, we started off with 25 conditions that were met in March. Now, by September, 71 conditions are to be completed. What is the status of the domestic debt restructuring? And also, can these conditions be met in such a short time? Will the economy take a turn for the worse if these conditions are not met?
Can say in terms of commitment to the IMF under the extended fund facility. Here, the commitment is that if you can remember last time when we reached the staff level agreements, and then we completed the first review completion in 20th of March. In February, there were certain commitments to be implemented and delivered. So we have a timeline, obviously, but this timeline is basic commitment is to complete all the reforms, implement and meet targets before the completion of approval of the executive board, the first review, which the September there's a mission coming here to assess the situation. That's not the deadline. It's like pre-action for the next review. So I think government has made good progress in terms of quantitative targets, except for revenue targets. All targets have been met, including net inflation, reserves, all have been met on quantitative basis. And structural reform, there are certain reforms. For example, Central Bank Act. If you look at what was in the document, supposed to be passed by end of April, but it was passed, I think, end of June or somewhere. Still, we have met the condition. Could be delays in implementation, but that doesn't mean the direction we are moving in have not been reversed.
Staying on topic, considering the presence of excessive interest rates on certain lending products and the inadequate downward adjustment in market lending interest rates relative to that of deposits, the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has decided to impose a ceiling on interest rates. In addition to this, the board noted that other market lending interest rates on rupee loans and advances should also adjust downwards further in line with the relaxed monetary policy stance. The Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka decided to impose caps on interest rates on pawning facilities at 18% per annum, on pre-arranged temporary overdrafts at 23% per annum, and on credit cards at 28% per annum for all licensed banks. Further, the board surmised that penal interest rates need to be capped at 2 percentage points over regular interest rates charged on the relevant credit facility. Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe confirmed that the administrative measures regarding caps will be issued tomorrow.
However, the Monetary Board took note of excessive lending rates of certain products in the market still, which is sort of not in line with the current monetary policy stance. Therefore, the Monetary Board decided to adopt targeted measures to reduce excessive lending rates, and also Monetary Board decided to direct the licensed banks to reduce overall rupee lending rates going forward. These rates range from 17.75% to 26%, but Monetary Board proposed a maximum rate of 18%. And the directions will be issued with regard to these measures, and these measures will be subject to further review in accordance with the overall monetary policy stance of the central bank going forward.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වුණා පොලි අනුපාත වෙළඳපොළ පොලි අනුපාතත් එයත් එක්කම අඩුවේ කියලා එක්කම නමුත් ඩීඩියෝ දේශීය ණය ප්‍රතිගමන යම් ප්‍රමාද නිසා යම් කිසි ප්‍රමාදයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අපි අඩු කරන හැම වෙලාවෙම කියලා තිබුණා මේ අපි ප්‍රතිපත්ති පොලි වෙනපාතය අඩු කරන ආකාරයට සහ මුදල් ප්‍රතිපත්ති යම් කිසි දිවසිතා වැඩි වෙන ආකාරයට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා වෙළඳපොළ පොලි අනුපාතය අඩුවේ කියලා. නමුත් අපි හිතපු තරමටම අඩු වෙලා නැත්නම් අපි ඒ වෙලාවෙත් ප්‍රකාශ කරා යම් ආකාරයක ඇඩ්මිනිස්ට්‍රේටිව් මෙෂර්ස් කියන්නේ අපි නියාමනය පැත්තෙන් යම් කිසි ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්න සිද්ධ වෙයි කියලා ඒ අනුව අපි ගිය මුදල් මණ්ඩලයේ සාකච්ඡාව අපි දැක්කේ පුලියන් පද ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම යම් කිසි ආකාරයක අඩුවීමක් වෙලා තියෙනවා අපි ඒක හඳුනාගෙන තියෙනවා. නමුත් ඒ අඩුවීම වේගය තවමත් ප්‍රමාණවත් නැති බව හැඟීම නිසා තවදුරටත් ප්‍රතිපත්ති පොලියන පාතය අඩු කිරීමට පෙර මෙතෙක් අඩු කරපු ප්‍රතිපත්ති පොලියන පාත සහ අනිකුත් ද්‍රවශීලතාවය වැඩි කිරීම සඳහා කරපු ඒවායේ සම්පූර්ණ වාසිය සහ ඒකේ ප්‍රතිඵලය පිළිපල පොලියන පාත වලට යම් කිසි ආකාරයක ලබා දීමට කාලයක් ලබා දිය යුතු නිසා අපි කල්පනා කරා ඉස්සෙල්ලා ඒකේ තියෙන සම්පූර්ණ තියෙන බලපෑම අනුව තවදුරටත් දිගටම අඩු වෙනවා අපිට පේනවා. නමුත් ඒ අඩුවීම යම් කිසි ආකාරයක ඉක්මන් කරලා සාමාන්‍ය පුලි අනුපාත මට්ටමකට ප්‍රතිපත්ති පුලි අනුපාත එක ගැලපෙන අනිත් පුලි අනුපාතත් එකත් එක්ක ගැලපෙන ආකාරයට සාමාන්‍යකරණය කිරීම සඳහා තමයි මේ ඇඩ්මිනිස්ට්‍රේටිව් මෙෂර්ස් කියන ඒවා අපි සෙකුලයක් විදියට නිකුත් කරන බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන හෙට වෙනකොට ඒක නිකුත් කරයි. කොහොමද දැනට අඩු වෙන වේගයට අමතරව පොඩ්ඩක් ඒ අඩුවීමේ වේගය වැඩි කිරීමට යම් කිසි කාලයක් තුල
මම දැන් කිව්වා සර්කියුලර් එකක් නිකුත් කරා කියලා පුද්ගලික බැංකුවලට. ඒකේ නිශ්චිත කාල රාමුවක් තියෙනවද අපේක්ෂා කරන්න මෙච්චර ප්‍රමාණයකින් අඩු කරන්න කියලා?
අඩුම වශයෙන් 3%ක්වත් දැන් තියෙන මට්ටමේ ඉඳලා අඩු කරන්න. හැබැයි දැනටම අඩු කරපු බැංකු වලට අඩු කරන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් දැන් ප්‍රතිපත්ති පොලියම මත 12% තියෙනවා නම් අපිට කියන්න බෑ බැංකු වලට 12% නම් දැනටත් ඒගොල්ලෝ ඇවරේජ් ලෙන්ඩ් කරලා තියෙන තව 3ක් අඩු කරන්න කියන්න බෑ. ඒකට අර වැඩිපුර තියෙන අයට අඩුම වශයෙන් 3%ක වගේ ප්‍රමාණයක් අඩු කරන්න.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe underscored the comprehensive vision for Trincomalee transformation into a multifaceted hub encompassing energy, transportation, maritime, commerce, naval operations, aviation, industry and tourism today. Addressing a special committee meeting on Eastern Province development, he highlighted the collaborative role of India in realizing this strategic program. President Ranil Wickremesinghe asserted that land stands as the essential factor of the development trajectory and highlighted the importance of vigilant management for the achievement of desired development objectives.
A special committee meeting on Eastern Province development was held at the Trincomalee Air Force Base under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
තිරුකුණාමලේ දිස්ත්‍රික්කය පිළිබඳව සුබන ජුරොන් සමාගමෙන් සකස් කරලා තියෙන. සැලැස්ම පදනම් කරගෙන ලංකාවත් ඉන්දියාවත් අතර තිරුකුණාමල සංවර්ධන ගිවිසුමට පැමිණලා තියෙනවා. අපිට තියෙන්නේ ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න. දෙවනුව සුබන ජුරොන් සමාගම සමගම දැන් වෙරුගලාරු සිට පානම කුමන දක්වා මූදු කරේ දියුණු කරන්නටත් වැඩසටහනක් සකස් කරගෙන යනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම තිරුකුණාමල වරාය දියුණු වෙනවා නම් නැගෙනහිර පළාතත් ඒකට සම්බන්ධ උතුරු මැද පළාතේ ඒ ප්‍රදේශات එකතු කරගන්න. මහවැලි අධිකාරියත් ඉඩම් දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවත් ඒකට උවමනයි. ඒ වගේම තිරුකුණාමල නගරය ප්‍රධාන වෙළඳ නගරයක් වරාය නගරයේ බවට පත් කරන්න මඩකලපුව කල්මුනේ අම්පාරය වැනි නගරවල IT ව්‍යාපාර මෙහාට ගෙනෙන්න පළමුවෙන්ම තියෙන්නේ මේ සංවර්ධන සැලසුමුයි ඉඩම් පිළිබඳ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න විසඳගෙන අනික් වැඩ කටයුතු කරන්න. මට ඕනේ 20යි 19යි 20යි 23 අතර මොකක්ද ඉඩම් වලට උනේ කියලා. මොකද 20 මුකුත් උනේ නැහැ. 21 මුකුත් උනේ නැහැ. 22 මුකුත් උනේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ආපහු 23 විතරයි පටන් ගත්තේ. ඉතින් ඒ කාලෙදී හෙක්ටයාර් 20000ක් යනවනම් මේක හරි පුදුම තත්ත්වයක්. ඉඩම් ගන්නවා එකකේවට ඒ අතරතුරේදී ඉඩම් මංකොලෙකුත් වෙනවා. ඉතින් මෙතන තියෙන ලොකුම සම්පත තමයි ඉඩම් ටිකයි මුහුදු වෙලා. ඉතින් ওই දෙක නැති වුණොත් මේ ප්‍රදේශය දියුණු කරන්න බෑ අපිට ආපහු. අපිට උවමනයි තියෙන ඉඩම් ඔක්කොම සංවර්ධනයට යොදවන්න.
With the speculation of the arrival of another Chinese research vessel to Sri Lanka, Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Counsel Ali Sabri says that the Sri Lankan government will introduce a standard operations procedure and will take necessary measures to ensure that activities which might escalate tensions with neighbours will be avoided. Speaking to Indivari Amawata during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister said that Sri Lanka must have market access via trade agreements, adding that adherence of a protectionist mode will not help a country grow.
A research vessel that has requested to dock at Colombo and then to Hambantota. This is the Xi'an 6, the Chinese vessel. But how do you think the government will look to handle India's security interests?
What we are trying to do is to introduce a standard operational manual, SOP, so that people will know what will be allowed and what will not be allowed. We are very, very interested not to allow anything which could escalate the tension within our neighbors and us, as well as big power rivalry here in our backyard. So we will try to reduce that tension. But any legal, official, acceptable visits like any other country should be allowed. So we are looking at the pros and cons of it and taking into consideration all aspects of it. And we are talking to our friends from all parts of it. And hopefully we will be able to resolve this in amicably without adding to the already existing tension among the big power rivalries all over the world.
India has made major progress in its foreign policy and relations with Sri Lanka. Does this seem like a setback for China, or is India gaining major influence over Sri Lanka?
I don't think so. We have always had good relationship with everybody, and naturally India is our biggest neighbor and very influential neighbor. There is a lot of opportunity when India is growing for us to work with them. So that doesn't mean that we don't work with China. We have made it very, very clear that we will continue to welcome investment from any part of the world. Right now, we have good relationship both with India and China.
Have we been able to build the lost trust with Japan, especially with the recent visits to Japan? But is that trust built for Japan to believe in Sri Lanka going forward?
Within the state to state and government to government, we have done a lot of repair work. And since President Wickremesinghe has taken over, Japan is firmly supporting Sri Lanka.
The RCEP, Sri Lanka's application, and as well as other trade pacts that we're looking at, what opportunities does really lie for Sri Lanka from foreign policy perspective?
If you look at many other countries like Malaysia, the ASEAN countries, and Indonesia, Vietnam, they all have number of free trade agreement where they have access to each other's market. So that would be also good for the consumer and for the investors. So we need to look at it. We can't only continue to go on a protectionist economy, because Sri Lankan economy, if you look at it in 1991, 1992, 31% of our GDP was on export. Today it has come down to less than 15%. So we are all talking about export-oriented economy, because that is how you are going to get your foreign currency. But to do that, you need to have access to market, You need to get the investors to come and invest, and you need to transfer the technology. So that to take place, have this access, when investors come and invest here, they are looking at not to support the Sri Lankan market, which is very small. They will be looking at access to the international market for a larger market. How do you ensure that? You can only ensure that through access to other preferential trade agreement, because so many others are having it. You don't have it. So you are at a disadvantage. For example, with China. Chinese are very keen to bridge the gap between Sri Lanka and China, because now it's totally in favor of China. We import so much from China, but we can't export. But we are not been able to actually enter into a free trade agreement. But if we have a free trade agreement, we will have more than 500 products which will have preferential access to the market, including gems, jewelry and things like that. So we are not doing it. So it's time that we should do this.
Going forward, what opportunities do we see with working with Singapore?
Working with Singapore, there are many opportunities. One is, I think we must try to get the investment into the country. So we must create an environment which will be conducive for investment. Now we drive away the investors. Investors come here, they have been sent from pillar to post, and there are hundreds of different clearances and licenses had to be taken from several different stakeholders. So nobody want to do business like that, because there are so many other countries open for them. So we need to build that kind of a thing. And there are energy security, where we can look at Sri Lanka as an important hub. Then you have huge green hydrogen potential in this country, where we could create green hydrogen and export to places like Singapore. Carbon credit, because they are a highly industrialized country there. So every time they are industrialized, they will put out a lot of carbon into the thing. So instead of that, if they can create a project in Sri Lanka where carbon neutrality or carbon credit is being given, so that's a huge opportunity for Sri Lanka.
You mentioned about reassurances that Japan still requires regardless of this progress, and assurances that Sri Lanka is giving now. So how, especially with your intervention, is this foreign policy bridge going to be built, and also those concerns on investments and ease of doing business in Sri Lanka?
For us to go and canvas for investment, you have to have an environment which is conducive for investment. So President Vikram Singh has understood that, and I think he's in the process of finalizing a one-stop shop by amalgamating BOI and all the other export board and all those things. One shop, one place. You have to have an Invest Sri Lanka office. Anybody comes there, he will be given a relationship manager. It's his job within 6 weeks or so, within that one framework, get all the necessary approval and allow and facilitate the investment. Without that, no one is going to come, because they are not going to chase investment here. Our biggest strength is our location and our people. So if that is the case, you must create a conducive environment for people to come and invest here. And then of course, our foreign relationship, because we are independent, we can work with everybody. So therefore, we must make use of that.
In other news, the Joint Council for Professions of Supplementary Medicine organised a 24-hour token strike action joined by trade unions of radiotechnologists, medical laboratory technicians, pharmacists, physiotherapists and occupational therapists. Meanwhile, President of the Association of the Government Medical Laboratory Technologists said that the Ministry of Health has been given 1 week to implement agreements reached during a discussion with the Health Secretary today.
A 24-hour token strike organised by the Joint Council for the Professions of Supplementary Medicine commenced at 8 a.m. today. The token strike was organised in demand of solutions for 7 issues, including the delaying of the amendment of recruitment procedures as well as the issuance of a circular regarding rate promotions. Patient care services in all state-owned hospitals were affected due to the token strike, which will continue up to 8 a.m. tomorrow. Following the strike, treatment procedures at provincial general hospitals and other hospitals were disrupted. Trade unions of radiotechnologists, medical laboratory scientists, pharmacists, physiotherapists and occupational therapists also joined the strike. Meanwhile, President of the Sri Lanka Association of Government Medical Laboratory Technologists, Ravi Kumudesh, said that 7,000 officials representing his association will be taking part in the strike action. However, the token strike did not affect operations of children's hospitals, maternity hospitals as well as cancer hospitals. Deputy Director General of the Colombo National Hospital, Dr. Rukshan Belan, said that the strike action launched was fair.
වෛද්‍ය පරිපූර්ණක වෛද්‍ය වෘත්තිකයන්ට අසාධාරණයක් වෙලා තියෙනවා කියන එක අද ඔප්පු වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ ඒවට පිළියම් යොදනවා මිසක් මිනිය පරීක්ෂණ තියාගෙන කරුණාකරලා වෘත්තීය සමිති නායකයන් පසුපස ලුහු බඳින්න එපා.
Meanwhile, Acting Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Health, Dr. G. Vijay Surya, said that despite the strike, facilitation has been made for patients to purchase drugs from government pharmacies.
මම හිතන්නේ ඔවුන්ගේ එල්ලීම් විදිහට තිබ්බේ බඳවා ගැනීම පරිපාටිවල යම්කිසි වෙනස්කමක් සහ උසස් වීම වල යම්කිසි වෙනස්කමකුත් ඒ වගේම විනය පරීක්ෂණ පිළිබඳව පාත්නා ගැටලු පිළිබඳව යම් කිසි කෙනෙකුට විනය පරීක්ෂණයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඉතින් විනය පරීක්ෂණයකට මුහුණ දෙන එක ඉතාමත් හොඳයි. එවැනි දෙයක් ඉවත් කරන කියලා ඉල්ලා සිටීම තරම් නිවැරදි නැහැ.
In the meantime, representatives of the Joint Council for Professions of Supplementary Medicine arrived at the Ministry of Health with the aim of holding discussions pertaining to the issues with the Secretary to the Ministry.
සාකච්ඡාව 100% සාර්ථකයි. හෙට උදෑසන 8ට අපි මේ වර්ජන ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයේ අවසාන කිරීමට තීරණය කළා තියෙනවා. අද දවසේදී සෞඛ්‍ය ලේකම්වරයා අපිත් එක්ක එකඟ වෙච්ච එකඟතා ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙයි කියන අපේක්ෂාවෙන් දින 7ක කාලයක් සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයට ලබා දෙනවා.
The Department of Meteorology has warned the public to be cautious due to the prevailing hot weather as they expect temperatures in several provinces to spike to the caution level. As such, the department issued an amber-coloured heat index advisory to the north central and eastern provinces as well as the Vavuniya, Mullaitivu and Munaragala districts.
For the past few days, most parts of Sri Lanka, including Vavuniya and Mullaitivu, have experienced an intense heat wave contributing to excessively hot weather. Subsequently, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre of the Department of Meteorology has issued an amber heat index advisory today. The heat advisory was issued to the north central and eastern provinces as well as the Vavuniya, Mullaitivu and Munaragala districts. The temperature felt on human body is expected to rise up to caution levels in some places in the north central and eastern provinces as well as the Vavuniya, Mullaitivu and Munaragala districts. Following the shoot heat advisory, the Met Department urged the public to stay hydrated and take breaks in the shade as often as possible, check up on the elderly and the sick, and to wear lightweight and white or light-coloured clothing.
Business news after a short break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්.
Welcome back. In stocks news, the Colombo Stock Exchange closed in red today with the all-share price index falling by 1.08%. The Colombo Stock Exchange all-share index closed down 1.08% at 11,262.92 points, dragged by losses in financial stocks. Trading volume on the index fell to 74.8 million shares from 102 million shares in the previous session. Meanwhile, the more liquid S&P SL20 fell by 1.65% to close at 3,195.65 points. This resulted in market turnover falling to 2.43 billion rupees from 2.97 billion rupees in the previous session. The diversified financial sector was the top contributor to market turnover, while the food, beverage and tobacco sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 130.1 million rupees, while domestic investors were not net sellers, offloading shares worth 2.37 billion rupees. A quick look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies right now. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has banned 9 entities that have reportedly conducted pyramid schemes, which are prohibited under law. Central Bank Assistant Governor KGP Sirikumara pointed out that this is a cognizable offence, committing this crime, which means that you can be arrested without a warrant.
The central bank issued a notice banning 9 entities that had participated in or conducted pyramid schemes, which is a punishable offence under Sri Lankan law. As such, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has requested the Attorney General to consider instituting criminal proceedings in terms of the provisions of Section 83C of the Banking Act of the banned entities. The 9 entities banned by the Central Bank for engaging in pyramid schemes are TN's Lanka Healthcare Private Limited, Best Life International Private Limited, Global Lifestyle Lanka Private Limited and Markwo International Private Limited. Further, VML International Private Limited, Fast 3 Cycle Private Limited, Sport Chain app, Sports Chain ZS Society Sri Lanka, OnMax DT and the MTFE app, MTFE SL Group, MTFE Success Lanka Private Limited and MTFE DSCC Group Private Limited are also included in the ban list.
පිරමිඩ් සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි දකින්නේ මේ නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙන්නේ නැහැ හරියට. නීතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන අංශය පොලිසිය වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එකතු වෙලා මේ මුල් අවස්ථාවේදීම මේක මර්ධනය කරන ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් අවශ්‍යයි කියලා නීතිය සංශෝධනය කළා.
ඔය අදහස තියෙනවා සමාජයේ ඉතා බහුලව වෙන අපරාධ නම් පොලිසියකින් අල්ලනවා. ඉතින් මේක බෑනේ මහ බැංකුව කියනකම් ඉන්න ඕනේ කියලා සමහරවිට පොලිසිය ඇතැම්මංශවල පාව මේ අදහස් තිබුණා. නමුත් ඒක එහෙම නෙවෙයි. මම නීතිමය තත්ත්වය පැහැදිලි කරනවා. මේක අපරාධමය වරදක්. 83 සේවකයන්ගේ තියෙන වරද අපරාධ නිර්ණය සංග්‍රහයට අනුව ගත්තොත් සංජය වරදක්. එහෙම නැත්නම් කනයිසබල් ඔෆෙන්ස් එකක්. තවත් විදිහකට කියනවා නම් වරෙන්තුවක් නොමැතිව අත්අඩංගුවට ගත හැකි වරදක්. ඒ වගේම තමයි මේ වරද දෙවෙනි කොටස. අර වෙන කෙනෙකුට හානියක් විය හැකි බව දනිමින්ම මේවා ප්‍රචාරණය කරනවා කියන එක සංජය වරදක්. ඒ කියන්නේ කනයිසබල් ඔෆෙන්ස් එකක් වරෙන්තුවක් නොමැතිව අත්අඩංගුවට ගන්න පුළුවන් වරදක් වගේම අපදිය නොහැකි වරදක් වශයෙන් සැලකනවා.
නීතිය තිබුණාට ඒක ඊටම පැහැදිලි නෑනේ. يعني මේක ඔප්පු කරන්නත් ඕනේ. අපි දැන් උදාහරණයක් ගත්තොත් කසිප්පු විකුණුවන්නේ නැද්ද කියන එක කසිප්පු ටික අල්ල ගත්තාම අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේක තියෙනවා යම්කිසි සාක්ෂියක් මේ පුද්ගලයා කසිප්පු තියාගෙන ඉඳලා නීති විරෝධීව තියාගත්ත කියන. නමුත් මේකෙදී ඔබතුමා කියන ගමක දෙයක් සිද්ධ වෙනවා. ඒතර පොලිසියෙන් ගිහිල්ලා ඒ ප්‍රචාරණ කෙනෙක් ඇහුවාට පස්සේ සල්ලි දාපු කෙනාමත් පොලිසියට සහයෝග දෙන්නේ නෑනේ. සමහරවිට පොලිසියේ නිලධාරිය සම්බන්ධලා තියෙනවා. රජයේ නිලධාරිය සම්බන්ධලා තියෙනවා.
The annual general meeting of Associated Motor Finance is scheduled to be held virtually on the 27th of September. Meanwhile, Lanka Milk Foods will also hold its annual general meeting virtually on the 12th of September 2023. More on this and other news as we delve into the corporate world with this package.
The annual general meeting of Associated Motor Finance Company PLC is expected to be held as a virtual meeting on 27th of September 2023 at 10 a.m. for the purposes of considering and receiving the annual report of the board and the audited financial statements for the financial year ended 31st March 2023 together with the report of the auditors. The directors will also be authorized to determine donations for the financial year ending 31st of March 2024 up to the date of next annual general meeting. Meanwhile, the 41st annual general meeting of Lanka Milk Foods is expected to be held virtually on the 12th of September 2023. In the meantime, non-executive directors of Cooperative Insurance Company PLC, KSS Veerasekara and D. Tilakavardhan retired from their positions as directors with effect from 19th of August. Nominations for the vacant positions were put into the annual general meeting 2023 and were approved by shareholders on 19th of August. They are expected to be announced after getting approved from the Insurance Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka.
That ends my bulletin for today. More news tomorrow on Sri Lanka's premier news channel, AdaDerana. For now, this is Jonathan Benedict wishing you a blessed Friday ahead with another reminder to stay safe and hydrated. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.